Hi, this is Lori from To the Trade, and I have Niall Johnson with me. Hi, Niall.
Hi.
And of course, we have Deb Barrett here, and I've been a big Deb Barrett fan for many years. Deb and I used to do an event. I don't remember if you know this, remember this, Deb, but we used to do the Design Tech conference thing
Yes.
years and years ago. So I feel like I've known you forever, and we recently got to spend some time together in Paris, which is so fancy. Um, but
But it was
I,
a lovely event.
it
Thank you
was.
for, inviting. It was lovely.
I really thought it was great to have you, and I have been watching your Deco Tours for such a long time, and I've been so impressed, and we're gonna get into that, everyone, but we're first gonna start off and ask you a little bit about how you got into the interior design business from the very beginning.
Okay. Oh, so many years ago. No, showing my age. I came out of the fashion industry. I have a degree in fashion, worked in fashion and for a major retailer. And by their wisdom, decided to plot me in the home store, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is worse than going into men's furnishings." If if you're in the fashion business, you everybody wants to be in women's sportswear or dresses or whatever, and I'm like, "What? I'm going into the home store?" Never left it, found my passion, loved it, left there being a buyer with multiple departments, one of them being window coverings, and went out on my own as a design entrepreneur and worked primarily in soft furnishings and window coverings focus. And I've been doing that for many years. Like everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, but like a lot of designers, you take lots of different paths, especially if you've been in this business for a while. Went from, primarily just design and working in design, went into some other areas of design, worked into the whole education and speaking area, starting in window coverings, then worked in the design education field, I guess, and that's really primarily where I'm working today. Besides doing a lot of consulting, I do a lot of creation of content for major manufacturers, proprietary stuff, some trend strategy stuff in consulting. I'm a CEU provider, so I do a lot of trend education and understand the whole landscape of continuing education when it comes to interior design. And then from there, got into decor tours. So a little bit about me.
That
I wear lots
has
of different
been
hats, just like everybody else does.
that has been so interesting to me too, because I have watched you and your career for a long time, and I've noticed that you are someone who I feel like younger designers or just beginning designers can come to, and you give them the right advice at the right moment. You're telling them, here is the places you should pay attention, because all of this, when you're new to this industry or when you're just sort of kind of coming in, it gets very overwhelming on
Yeah.
where you should spend your money and what you should be learning and what you should be adopting for your business and what you shouldn't. It's just so many paths that anyone can take, but no one can take them all. And
Exactly.
and I think that you boil it down for people in a really smart way. You've always been able to kind of make it manageable, but also elevated in
Well,
that
thank you. Yeah.
conversation.
So I'm a marketer at heart, and I'm a niche marketer at heart. So I think that's sort of where that comes from. I believe everybody you can't be everything to everybody. And that's where when you're trying to be a full service designer, and you're starting out, you can get overwhelmed. So it's kind of like finding your focus, finding your passion, getting rid of the stuff you don't like, give it to somebody else and then go for it. Be that guru in that niche. So that's kind of where what drives me and design has kind of come along with that now, right? We're kind of all about design specialties, right? And I often say, big plug for window coverings, if I might, is, it's the most technical and I think, probably the scariest niche within the design industry, but it is the most profitable. You
Oh,
can't be
wow.
shopped. It is the most profitable. And
Wow.
Mhm.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's another reason to, give it a check because if you're looking for new revenue streams or it's definitely a look at window coverings. So
Yes, and you have been you're not looking at it from a perspective of finding the right drapes and finding the right automated shades. You're looking at this from the perspective of really couture, dress elements implemented into window coverings
Yeah,
and just really beautiful, grand, you know, ex exploration of fabrics and technique. And has that
definitely.
served your business well by looking at those more critical needs and more high quality version of window coverings?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I bring the "it's all in the details" mentality, the more is better mentality, that's sort of my style philosophy, and then coming out of fashion with dressmaker details and understanding tailoring, I have a textiles background, love textiles, I'm a textile addict, if you will. So, again, made that decision early on within my own business to focus on that and let the other kind of stuff fall by the wayside and see where it led me. And, it led me into the luxury market. It also led me into working with designers. And, I started out basically retail, working with clients, still do some with clients, some long term clients, but primarily in the business, I'm working with very, very well known designers, and I'm basically their window covering specialist. I handle all things soft furnishings for them. They
Right.
basically call me and say and again, another profitable revenue stream that a lot of designers, don't think about. There are pros and cons to each, but I love it. And it's a luxury a product, right? And a service.
Right,
Window
absolutely.
coverings as it is. 'Cause interior design to me is a luxury product anyway. So,
It
we
is, yeah.
we need to start treating it like it.
Right,
In
exactly.
some categories, right? We
Yeah,
don't need to be apologetic because it costs X amount of dollars or, it's gonna take X amount of time. It's a luxury product. Don't apologize for it.
Agreed, agreed, 100%, 1,000%. Agreed.
yeah, so we were both geeking out about the fabrics we were seeing in Paris, and how
Oh my
can you
god.
not, be unapologetic? I mean, they're works of art,
I
you
know,
know?
I know, I
And
know.
we didn't even have the access you had at your tour, but we there, but we were still like, every window just like drooling and, it was
Oh,
so
I
won
know, and then coming off, we spent a couple of days later, and we were in it was Fashion Week, obviously, Couture Fashion Week, and I just posted earlier today, so there was, one of the makers for Dior was talking about
Oh,
how Maria was all about crinoline, and I was like, "Oh, I have to post this because after coming out of prom shopping this weekend, crinoline is all over for teenagers and for prom dresses, number 1. And number 2, the studio that he was talking about and showing how they had done the dresses was a studio that we visited when we were in Paris, and she gave us access into seeing them working on the couture pieces. So it
oh,
was pretty
wow.
crazy good. It
Well,
was
I
really good.
Wow.
that I mean, Niall, that is the kind of tour, and I've watched her go to castles, I watched her meet with,
Oh,
like,
man.
actual fabric makers while they're, like, meeting the sheep, and you're
Yeah,
this
those are the tours that I'd wanna be on. You know me,
that
I'm not one for, like, tours, I'm like, "No, I'll go to the spa. I'll read a book." But that sign me up.
that is the
Okay,
behind the
we
scenes.
expect to see you on one of them in 25 or 26 now.
Wow, that's amazing. Oh,
Yes,
man.
they're really special, they're lots of we'll get into it further, but they're really behind the scenes, and she, has a knack for creating it's almost like a once in
It's
a
an
lifetime
experience. It
Yeah.
sounds
experience.
not even like a tour, it's like an
It
experience
is,
almost.
it is.
Yeah,
These are, like, core memories you're going to be making,
yeah.
going to be, like, pinching yourself for years to come that you've even been there.
Yeah.
That kind of situation. But you mentioned that you were interested in education from pretty much the beginning, and I'm curious, why did you decide to take the path into becoming an educator in this industry?
It was always in the back of my mind, I have to say, it wasn't necessarily a priority, obviously, keeping the lights on and marketing and all that kind of stuff. Always that day to day takes priority. Actually, what happened was in within the window covering niche, I had made a decision early on to enter into some of the design competitions. And by the way, for whatever category you guys are in, it's a great marketing tool to get your name out there, to be able to say, I'm an award winning designer, to differentiate yourself between all the other designers, I believe. Anyway, I entered several design competitions, and the producer of the design competition came to me and said, "You, we have to ask you to stop entering because you keep winning."
Right.
Little self-promote there, and she's, "But what I would love you to do is would you speak and talk about, the process and what it takes and, what are maybe your tips and tricks about entering into a design competition?" So that was the first presentation I did, and after I did it, and I'm a process person also, I really enjoyed the whole sort of research, discovery, you know, settling on a topic and then doing a deep dive into it and then sharing it. And I I pride myself on that a lot of my or most of my presentations always have a sort of a real life application element to it. It's not just I don't want to be sitting up there and just spouting to somebody. I want to say, okay, here's what is happening. And this is how you can capitalize on it. Or here are three things you can do to, put that into your business model or whatever it is. And I really found that I enjoyed that and then gravitated to that.
Well, I want to say two things that I think are really remarkable about what you just said. So, first, Niall and I recently were judges on Design Casey Magazine's Designer Awards. They
Mhm.
just did their gala. They just gave all of those awards out, and it does surprise me sometimes that people who are putting in to be judged, they spend an enormous amount of time, sometimes money for these design competitions, but then they don't fill out kind of like the
Or
story, the story of what they did, or
you're like,
they don't
"What am I
include a lot of
looking at?"
pictures.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, so that's, from the Dutch perspective, that's something that's been surprising to me, and I know even people who have done show houses and how expensive that is. I They might send me, "This is what I'm sending in," and I'm like, "Wait a minute, you need to include, like, why you're doing this show house. What is your connection to the, the
Mhm.
charity or whatever.
Whatever, right.
What was your inspiration to do the room this way? What,
Mhm.
a list of the products with pictures and links would be great.
Mhm. What were the challenges? "Oh, guess what? I picked something and then this it was flawed and discontinued," or whatever, right? And I
Right,
had to pivot.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, why what are the challenges and how did you overcome them? You need to be giving a story to me, if I'm judging it or if I'm looking at it, if I wanna write about it, it has to be interesting.
Yep.
I have to know something and be interested. And I'm always surprised whenever I've been a judge. Sometimes there's nothing there, like, they don't include anything. There's just,
Yeah.
like, pictures, and
Yeah.
then that's it, and then I feel badly when they don't win, but because it I know that designers are so stretched of resources, and
Yeah.
they don't have the
Yeah.
time, and
Yeah.
Totally.
so sometimes they're like, "Oh, no, I remember I need to just get this centered," so they just quickly do it, but then they feel badly when they don't win but it's really not necessarily always because of the design. It's maybe 25% of the points were about your story, and you don't have a story, so I couldn't get you those 20 points
Right.
or 10 points or something.
And doesn't necessarily share that any of
Right,
or comments with them. Now, sometimes they will if you ask, but I think typically they prefer not to because then it gets
right,
into a tit for tat kind of thing, which I totally agree too. But I know
sure,
I mean, to be honest with you, that's probably one of the reasons why I first started or one of my first winnings was it's not maybe necessarily that I was like did something that was like so, different from everybody else or above everybody else's work or whatever, but I was pretty diligent about creating a design narrative. So everybody kind
right.
of knew, oh, this is what this is, and that now I get it kind of thing.
Yes, yeah, I think that that's overlooked sometime, and I always feel terrible about it because I know how much work goes into even submitting,
Yeah.
taking the time to
Yeah.
submit. I I try to
A
take it
professional
very
photographer.
seriously and read every little thing that they have because I wanna make sure I'm giving them as much attention as I can because I know it takes time out of their
Mhm.
day to even submit. So,
Right, and you
there's
know, you
that
brought
side.
up a really interesting point that's sort of like an overarching theme that we're talking about with some of my clients these days, is that designers, need to be more storytellers than salespeople.
Sure.
You
I
know,
agree,
it's
100%.
about you know, they always I always get laughs when I say this, it's about romancing that presentation. "Honey, throw that fabric out there and tell her," "give her a
Mhm.
reason to buy that stuff."
Yeah.
Exactly,
It's not
exactly,
like
make them
schlepping in
want it.
sample decks and throwing something down and saying, "Oh, well."
Yeah. I mean, I think we all need to know the story behind and why. I mean, we connect. We're a people that sat around a campfire and told each other stories, and that still is how we maintain an emotional connection with anything. So absolutely. And
Eh
then the other thing I wanted to talk to you about was that you were talking about how you got into education because they started asking you these questions and you started making the CEUs. And it's not easy to translate what you know to someone else in a way that they really truly take it in and understand it. And I think that that's just a natural skill you must have had, but you also must want to make this industry better because I've seen you do this in many areas and not always one or the other. I mean, you're doing technology sometimes, you're talking about window coverings, you're talking about, you know,
Yeah.
profits and marketing. So lots of areas that you're covering and providing education that people can really use and, it's a CEU that's valuable. I'm so curious about why that was a driving force when you're obviously so talented and just couldn't care. You could be like, "Oh, I don't care. I'm just gonna focus on myself."
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think 2 reasons. Number 1, I'm much better behind the scenes person than am out in front of people. I mean, I know that sounds like a dichotomy because standing in front of somebody presenting, but that has a bit to do with it. I think the other thing is I came into this industry when interior designers were the gatekeepers. You didn't get access into the mart unless you had a buyer's card. You know,
Mhm.
you there was it was very much a very in some ways secretive proprietary industry. Nobody shared their sources with anybody. They were offended if you asked. That's just the nature of the beast when I entered into this industry. So I kind of made a cognizant thinking about how I was treated, and not badly. I don't mean to sound like I was treated badly. It just as was the nature of the beast. And so I just kind of thought, you know what? My little revolution is about like sharing with everybody. There's enough work out there for everybody. And you're just
Right.
going to make your work better and people feel better about hiring you if you share it with other people. I don't want to get on a soapbox these days, but I think where we see it playing out a bit is in not sharing it or in oversharing, I guess you should say, is with all these design influencers and all this information that's out there on social media. There's so much bad information
Yeah.
about the industry, about the products and services that we do. I mean, yes, I would just did I'm in the middle of a certification course for window coverings, and I was doing a presentation on Wednesday and popped up and not to dissuade or not to call names out, but it was an Amazon ad, and it was for a ready-made drapery with clip rings, and it said, "The best custom drapery you could ever buy." And excuse me? No way. No wonder I have to defend myself in every turn,
No,
right?
I know. There was an influencer on TikTok, and she has, I don't know, 1,000,000 followers, and she was putting up a window treatment, and she said something to the effect of, and so she was doing a room makeover, and she said, "And so I put the so I put the curtain up because I felt like my motto is, why hire somebody to do something when I'm capable?" And I just thought to myself, that's not the point, and that's not the same thing
Exactly.
because this is this thin rod and these drapes that are just sort of hanging like napkins, and it's like, you can't compare that to a custom treatment. Like, it's you might be capable, but it's not the same thing. It's just not the same.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
then you got a million people that are following you like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, no, you're right, you're right. I can do this too." Oh my god.
There's one recently that I saved. I have this huge file of do's and don'ts, and there's one that I just had to save because it's like, how to hang a drapery without a rod. And so they were using, like, wire and copper piping and PVC, and I'm like, "Oh, do not even do that." Because then people are
Jeez.
like, it dumbs down our expertise.
Yeah,
So, anyway,
it really does.
off my soapbox, sorry.
No,
No, no, no, I
But
love
where
it.
I
you
come from
love
is
your
like
soapbox.
it's like the 2 things are, let's just share because there's enough for everybody, and let's get out there, and we kind of gave thinking about when you think about it, sort of, when the first designers, when the Dorothy Drapers and the Elsie Wolves and the Billy Baldwins were coming in, they were the experts. And yes, they were a gatekeeper, but they people believed that or believed in them, believed in their expertise, and they also educated their clients. And in the interim of how many ever decades, it feels like we've kind of given up the education part of being an expert, of not explaining to our customer, it always goes seems to always have to go to price, but we don't explain to them why it costs this much all the time. Or, "No, I'm recommending this because you can't do it that way because years down the road, this is gonna happen or that's gonna happen." Whether it's tile, whether it's, you know, quartz over, whatever. There's just so many areas that we kind of given up that educational aspect in educating our client. So that's another reason why I kind of went into it. And I actually do write content for manufacturers because manufacturers didn't necessarily
Mm.
get into CEU because of wanting to, educate and train. That's part of it because they, used to be your sales reps trained you, right? Designer, right? And now that's not certainly not the case. But it's a they realize that it's part of their marketing budget.
Right.
They've
And
moved
it
education into
creates
their marketing
more
budget.
efficient people if they understand how it works. It's saving problems down the road. So it's also,
Yeah.
it's marketing, but it's also like it's sales support, too.
Exactly, and it also gets the designers in the showroom. Think about how many showrooms in High Point w what they're doing CEU or doing presentations because
Mhm.
Sure.
that's the draw. Now you're in my showroom, and maybe you wouldn't have come here anymore, so or didn't know about me or whatever it is, but I'm bringing in, whoever to talk about whatever. I'm
Right.
genius. I'm
Yeah.
not bad at it.
I love it because I think that and I wanna touch on that point too, because I really think we are in alignment with what you just said. Niall and I were just at Vegas Market. We were just having this huge conversation about how we were saying designers sometimes accidentally market to each other and not all of those questions that their clients ask them don't become content that they can then in turn share with the audience of, like,
Absolutely.
people who are following you. If you say a percentage of the people must be following you because they like what you do and they're curious about it. But if all they ever get is, like, finished product and they don't get, "Well, this is why we do this, and this is why we do that, and this is how this process goes, and this is how if you do this, it affects our process, and it can make your project longer and cost more." I mean, these are things that can actually happen, and if we're not explaining that to them, they're caught off guard and they're angry and there's a feeling of distrust that happens.
Yep.
And if I listen to a designer, they're constantly saying, "Nobody understands what I do. It's only, they always think it's HGTV. They think it's going to cost less and it's going to be quick and then they're frustrated at me and I wish people would understand what we do." But
But
I'm
that's
like,
that's only
you
that's
can
all
talk
they only
about it.
know. That's the only thing they know, right? They don't know what they don't know. They think
Right,
they're a
and
good designer. Their friends told them they had really good taste, and they watched
right,
HGTV, but nobody else told
right,
them what.
exactly, and
Totally,
so
totally.
it's almost about, re-educating the market, and you have that we all have that opportunity. There's that influencer with 1,000,000 followers. Those could be designers if designers were willing to share what it is they actually do, because that influencer who's never really done a design project really doesn't know what they're talking about, and a designer does. So they know this is the fabric, this is what it goes into this, and this is how this really and people are hungry for that information, I think.
I
They just
agree.
there just need to more of it made.
Yeah.
Totally. Oh, I totally agree. I think it becomes this sort of self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Yes.
And it goes around in circles and circles, and then they can't understand why the phone isn't ringing, and people, don't understand me, and, it's and they get in this sort of this little resentful, whirlwind or
Funnel.
whatever,
Yeah.
right?
Niall was saying too, it's I when I was talking to him about it, we were basically, I was like, this is what I think designers are doing. And he goes, not only, I was trying to say, I think designers do it subconsciously, but
No,
Niall's
I mean,
like,
I just
no, no, no,
I do it consciously, and I told her, I said, I'm not ashamed to say it. Like, not only do I do it consciously, I know exactly the designers that I'm marketing. Like, I can see their faces that I'm marketing to when I'm putting a particular thing. Now, I will say, and I thought more about that conversation after I left Vegas. I will say that I think the algorithm, like it's 90% me and then like 10% the algorithm, because I've noticed like one time, I think the algorithm slipped and it let me see a potential client that I had talked to, and then she sort of had to put her project on the back burner. And I saw, oh my God, I didn't realize she was following me. I know she reached out to me, but I never knew that she followed me. And I was getting ready to post something that was like a little cheeky. And I was like, I'm not gonna post that now. Like I'm gonna reword it because now that I know she's following me, I'll say it a different way. So it wasn't my clients
Interesting.
are not top of mind because I never thought that they would be following me on social media. And I think I have that old school mentality about social media that like it's social media. And so I'm not mixing business with pleasure. It's a big virtual happy hour. So everybody in social media is like here, like they're my peers. And why would my clients be there? But why wouldn't they be there?
Yeah.
Because why wouldn't
well,
they
you'd
check
hope
out what
that
I'm
that's what
doing?
you're doing it for. You'd hope they'd be there.
Exactly.
No.
Yeah, exactly. And I start to reverse that thinking. Yeah. Yeah.
That's why I always wondered, and I get that a lot of the Facebook groups that I'm in and stuff, where the people are sharing issues and stuff. I get that they're closed and private, but I always wondered, what if your clients were actually privy to some of the stuff you were saying about them in those Facebook groups? I get that we need support. I'm all about that, but
Yeah.
geez,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes it's, girl, you can't be saying that.
I hear
I
you.
mean,
I hear
have
you.
some anyway, it's just, oh my gosh, and see, again, that comes back to the whole old school retailer fashion thing. Customer's always right. That
Yes.
bottom
Yeah.
line, that's how what I learned, customer's always right kind of
I
thing, but
Niall also said something that was when we were chatting that was kind of smart that I thought about, and I have since really visualize it and talk to a few other designers about it. And you were right, Niall. And they were like, they'll get a post. So have a post when they're ready to put an Instagram up. And then they will look at their friends that they're following, their designer friend, and this person's in Paris. And the person had a really great project. And the
Yep.
more they scroll, the more whatever they were going to post feels
The value of it. You're like,
unworthy,
you start the
unworthy.
day. Yep. You're like, oh my God,
You're
this is
so
such an
excited.
amazing. Yeah. This is so amazing. I didn't realize that this looks so great. And I'm so proud of myself. And then you go to hit send and you log on and it's, oh, she's doing this. He did that. He just got a book. He's doing this. And then it like slowly,
I'm
like
so
by the
guilty of that.
time, yeah. And by the time you go to post it, like what you thought was great is 10%. You're like,
Yeah.
maybe tomorrow. And you don't post anything at all.
I have lots of written to be posted stuff because,
Yeah.
I'm guilty of that. I'm so
You
guilty.
sort of let that and so I've
I'm not in the
learned
moment enough.
to let that not I've learned to sort of even if it's a even I'm faking it, I've learned to nope, let me just whatever I'm feeling, let me reverse it and congratulate that person or say, "Oh my God, this looks amazing." Or, "Oh my gosh, what a beautiful room," right? Just to turn that feeling around. Like if I feel like it's a great room and I'm letting that eat me alive, I'll just turn around and say, "What a beautiful room." Like, why
Well,
not compliment them?
Good
the
point.
You
other
know?
thing that I thought of after we talked that I don't think I've circled back on and talked to you about was that I know you very well, Niall, and I know your
Yeah.
heart. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you would never, if you knew that you're going to Paris or you're going to Vegas and being like a market pro made someone feel like they couldn't post their work, you'd feel awful about that.
Oh yeah,
You would
no,
not,
I would hate
you
that.
would
Oh, I would
never
hate
want them to feel that way or
no,
to,
never.
so they don't want you to feel, I mean, you have to assume they don't want you to feel that way either. It's just like, we're
Oh,
all
I
just
know,
trying to
yeah.
market. We're just trying to we're all just
Oh,
gonna
no, I know
say, "Look
that.
at me,"
It's just
but, not
It's
to
my
each
own
other,
stuff.
hopefully. Of
Oh, no,
course, of
no,
course.
it's my own stuff. Yeah, yeah,
But you
no.
have to
yeah,
assume it's wonderful to assume, like, when you do think that, you go, "Oh, wait a minute, I would never think that of them, so they won't think that of me." So,
Right.
yeah,
that maybe makes you realize, like, that you're as worthy as anyone else. I mean, and it is hard sometimes when you see someone going on glamorous trips and doing, like, amazing things because it starts to make you feel like you're
Right.
less than sometimes,
And don't
which
you
is
you
think
why,
that
as Deb said, you gotta talk to your client. I had to start just talking to my client
yeah, and don't you think it's a
and
li it's
ignore the other stuff.
yeah, no, I agree. I totally agree because I know I do it, and I always think that it's this I don't know that it's a crisis, but there's this whole, like, thing in the interior design industry, I think, more than some other industries, that we just have self-esteem issues. We have
Yeah,
self-confidence, and we can't self-promote ourselves like,
yeah,
other I mean, right? It's and, I mean, I don't
yeah,
know, that's probably a whole couple of
No, I
a
think you're
pod
right. I mean, I
podcast,
think
but it's like, how do thank God for some of the young emerging designers who that are kind of like not, that aren't doesn't bother them and they're out there because 'cause they're hopefully teach some of us old dog new tricks. I think that'd be great. But I know it's yeah, it's it's hard to talk about yourself.
do you find
it
the
is
other
hard.
side too? Like, when you're on one of these amazing trips, do you ever feel like you shouldn't post something because other people would be jealous about what you're doing? Do you ever
Yeah,
you do?
yeah,
Yeah. I can
yeah.
imagine that. I mean, because some
And
things with you are so special.
right, and, yeah, I do. I do. But that's something that I gotta get over.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
But
where I do the same thing. Sometimes I'll avoid it, partially not just because I don't want to promote what we're doing, but also because I like to live in the moment. I'm one of those people that really likes to when I'm in Paris and I'm enjoying it. Yeah, I remember
yeah,
last time and I were in Musée d'Orsay. I was like, I've been here now a million times. I don't have to take any more pictures of anything. I can
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah, yeah.
enjoy it and have the hot chocolate because I love it there.
Yeah.
no.
You know,
See, I think
just enjoy.
that's the second thing for me is that I try to kind of, like, put the phone away kind of thing, even though I know I need to be doing it to promote the tours and things, is that I want to, I want to, as you said, be in the moment. Paris particularly, because it's my most favorite place in the whole world. I mean, if I
Mhm.
believed in reincarnation, I live there in another life. I know it for a fact.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So, but
100%.
I think that that's something that we again, when you're thinking about trying to find inspiration or to, if you have creativity burnout or whatever all those things are, is that part of getting over that hump is putting the phone down and not looking at the emails, not posting and getting it back into the moment. 'Cause I
Yeah.
mean, every time I do a trip, I remember how something that I'm like, "Oh, I wanted to do that," or, "Oh, I need to get back into that," or perfect example is this went to a needlepoint shop this time around, and I'm a needle pointer, but I got away from it, and it's been maybe 4 or 5 years. I'm like, "You know what? I'm so inspired by all these canvases. I gotta start so I'm like, I'm buying myself a canvas and I'm gonna why am I sitting in front of the TV at night with my laptop there answering emails? I'm gonna start needle pointing. Now we'll see if that resolution holds true. Check back with me in
Right.
November, but I did buy a canvas.
That's wonderful.
That's the first
So
step. There you go.
I prefer step, like, you got an you have a goal now.
I
I
know
love it.
exactly. Exactly.
So you could you tell me how you got into the idea of doing these tours? How did that come to be?
So it's been about 10 or 15 years ago, for 15 years from now. I was traveling to the shows, primarily Heim Textile, Maison, Milan, etc., and was working for manufacturers, doing some trend reporting and some strategy and working on the press side of things as a design journalist. And met Susan, my business partner in Decor Tours, and we started traveling together, and then it got to be like, "Well, are you going here?" "Yeah, I'm gonna be here. Wanna share a room," kind of scenario, and we actually were in Paris, and we were having dinner one night, and we were talking about the shows and conversations we had had throughout the day with different people, and we were commenting how everybody was always saying to us, "Oh, can I carry your suitcases when you go to, Frankfurt or Milan or Paris or wherever?" "Is there room? Can I help you out? What can I do?" Right? And it just was like an epiphany moment. Seriously, it was just a light bulb went off and we were like, you know, we why can't we do this? Why can't we take people? And so then we started fleshing out the business plan about, our thing is small group luxury tours. It's we don't want to stay at the Sheraton because you can always stay at a Sheraton. Let's go for the European fun hotel and kind of have that. It's all as you said now, it's about the experience for us
Yeah.
and not the tour, and so then we thought, "Okay, what is it that designers would want if they were traveling?" And then we said, "Well, we know what we'd want." So, we started being honest, that's how we started building it out,
Yeah.
and it proved to be that we were like-minded individuals, and so we've been doing them for 10 years, and then that also grew into me being the first one to do buyers tours at High Point Market and Las Vegas Market and having the relationship I did with both of the, Anmore and High Point Authority, and now we're really focusing on the international aspect of it because we're firm believers that every designer in North America should travel internationally and see what's going on in the design world elsewhere.
I agree. I agree. And you
Agreed.
Yeah.
so wonderful. And like I said, I earlier, like it really is truly like a life-changing experience to
Mhm.
do an event like this. I've done some design events with brands or, like years ago with Modenis,
Mhm.
Veronica's
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
Right.
blog
She was a
tour.
she was definitely a, forward thinker in that whole regard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And partly, that creating the experience, not just bring you to the trade show and show you around all the showrooms, but really, going to a specific restaurant and having a back, room tour of something and getting a little gift from someone or, I those experiences, they stay with you forever. And the people you meet too. It's almost like a camp like environment is what I kind of think of it as because the bonds you make and these kinds of tours, you become lifelong friends. In fact, I was talking to Michelle Blumel, who said she went on one of your tours, like, years ago, and they still have a group chat,
Yep.
and they still talk all the time, and they still email each other all the time, and I was wondering, I wonder if
Yes.
Deb knows how many little groups of campers she has.
I do. I couldn't give you an exact number, but we pride ourselves on that, so that's the hidden secret about it. Often we get asked, "How did you" in some cases, for example, in Paris, when we're in a hotel, it's double occupancy, and often we're putting people that don't know each other together. And everyone's, "Oh, I don't know about that, and what if she snores, blah, blah, blah." It's, "Yeah, but I can tell you, I can give you lots of stories of people that are lifelong friends now are going to their kids' weddings and, that kind of thing now because we put them together and they didn't know each other. And we were in Provence in September, and we had a group of 6 women, and 3 were traveling together, 3 that I and actually, I think you probably know all 6 of them, Lori. 3 were traveling together, and 2 they were from, Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas, and 2 were traveling together from New Hampshire. They owned their joint business partners in business. They immediately, craziness hit it off. I am telling you,
Wow.
they are still on our WhatsApp chat, and we're getting dinged all the time from September. They're already making plans to go here or there or whatever, so it's always fun. We love it, we love it. In fact, the Paris trip, one of the gals is just sent everybody the recipe from the cooking class that she did in Paris.
I
So,
love
yeah,
it.
that's the best part of the trip, to be honest with you.
I
That's
love it.
amazing.
I can see it, and the lifelong friendships that you make on an event like this because you're experiencing something so truly, like, magical and the feeling is, like, behind the scenes exposure to something that you wouldn't if you
Absolutely.
were just walking up, you would not get a chance. Can you explain, just on this last trip, just a few things you got to do that no one else would get to do?
Sure. Sure. Well, I mean, obviously, we had an invitation to the bear party, which, thank you for Niall and Lori for sure. We were at Tim Corrigan's party, which was
Nice.
invitation only, and Jen Ho, and some of the exclusive parties. So you have those exclusive party things. That's your reason you're going to Paris, and that's your thing. But we did, as I mentioned, we went to Atelier Le Boisillon, which she's works in interior design and haute couture, and she's an embroiderer. And so she took us into her studio, talked to us about the process, then took us into her sample room. And honest to God, it's just racks and racks of samples that she used for selling, and then walked us through some of the highlights and talked about what the inspiration was in and then how she actually executed it. So, for example, one of the pieces it looks like it's leather applique, but it's actually algae. So because she's
Or
very into sustainability. Another piece is she's embroidering on stone. So imagine like a stone countertop that might have an embroidered piece in the corner kind of scenario, right?
that's
Yeah.
insane.
I know, insane, right? So that
Yes.
let me see, what else did we do? We were at Baccarat, we went behind the scenes at Baccarat and then had lunch at Baccarat with the CEO of Baccarat. So, not only you get to meet the artisans and the makers, but you also get to meet the stakeholders and the people, whether it's the person that's putting the collaboration together with the manufacturer or the CEO or the creative director, and they're sitting down and doing that old school presentation where they're saying, "Look, blocks and check," for example, the Romo creative director was all about, "We're all about squares and blocks and check this year. This is why. This is what we're seeing happening in the market. Then here's a piece of fabric." And it was a jacquard, and we had to develop this construction. So in other words, we had to go to the mill and say, "This is what we want it to look like. We have to figure out how we can do this. How can we weave this?" So we're getting that kind of information. Again, all goes back to, okay, now it's a couple $100 a yard. What are $300 a yard? Now I know. I'm
Right.
armed with the fact I spoke with a
Yeah.
creative director and being able to say to your client, I spoke with a creative director when I was in Paris on Romo on this fabric and blah, 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 right? Or they just did this amazing suede it looks like suede and it's not. The new generation of polyesters that are coming out there are incredible. The stuff we saw in Paris. But anyway, so it's that kind of thing. I can give you a little sneak.
That much with you. The confidence to be able, and the allure that, like you said, the romancing of what that must feel like for the client,
Yeah.
able to say you were meeting with the having lunch with the
Yeah.
CEO.
CEO of Baccarat.
Yeah, and
Giving
it is it's very much also it's all business. So we do 1 or 2 presentations that are group presentations when it's a business focused trip. Paris and Milan are business focused trips. And then we'll ask everybody to give us a deep dive of what they want to do, both professionally and what their business goals are of the trip, and then we will get them special appointments. So, for example, one of the gals was working with wanted to is working in doing a lot of lace and is looking for a lace source. So we put her in touch with Sophie Allais, which is a haute couture lace maker. And she had a one-on-one appointment with her in her studio, and, another gal we went to I don't know, did you go to Asura, Fabrics? He's Thai. Oh my god, so he's working
Yeah.
in metal and
Oh,
lacquered,
wow.
and so he was doing, like, for window covering people, doing a lot of interesting metal shade materials, mixing metals with mother of pearl and
Oh my
naturals and
gosh.
all kinds of things. So, for example, he had a stainless steel. It looks like it's so think tool, right?
Yeah.
But stainless steel, and he folds it up like origami, uses origami.
Oh,
Then he puts
man.
a blowtorch to it. And so when you open it up, you get all this iridescence from the blowtorch because it's metal and the way it turns.
Mhm.
And, so everyone's gonna hear this and everyone's gonna have the comment, "Oh, my customer would never buy that," right? Or, "It's so expensive, it's blah, blah, blah." Can I tell you that his retail on that fabric, a meter is 300 retail is $300 a yard. Now, we're selling prints that are 3 and jacquards that are $300 a yard, so it's not out of the realm of possibility, right, for a
Wow.
luxury client, right? But anyway, to finish the story, one of the members of our tour group had visited Thailand, was really into the craft of Thailand. They got talking. She's an upholsterer and a workroom. He said to her the CEO said, "You need to meet my ex-boss, Alexander Lamont." He takes her across the street to Alexander's studio, introduces she's going as an artist in residence to Thailand to teach his workroom how to upholster.
What? Oh
Yeah.
That's
my gosh,
insane.
So it's
insane.
those kinds of conversation and I can give you lots of different stories like that. There's those kinds of conversations that happen. So we put
Well, it's you're
we're connectors
introducing
if
you
you're into Chris
are.
Anderson and the tipping
Oh my
point, we're
gosh.
mavens and connectors.
I
And
love,
I was trying to
love
write that down. That's Asura, you said?
It's a Sora. I'll send you the link now. It's
Okay.
Uara. It's his stuff. He
ASUA.
had a wallpaper that he lacquered 5 times in
Oh
navy
my
blue,
god.
and then he put a gesso over it, and then he sanded it down so that the lacquer came up, and then he cracked it, and then he gilded over the crack, so that sort of
Oh my
Japanese but it wasn't and it's sold by the
that is
panel.
me.
It's
That's
so
just
dreamy,
oh my
so
god.
dreamy, so dreamy. And he had a shade material for woven shades made out of he had taken seat belts and literally seat belts and frayed them and woven them into this fabric, and you would never know, but it's literally seat belts.
That is insane. That is
gosh.
I
insane.
know. You're not gonna sell it, but you can show it and tell your client about it, and she's, "Oh, you can find." But anyway, so those are the kinds of things. A
I
little
love it.
We're going to London in May for Craft Week, and, it's not your high school craft gymnasium kind of thing. It's very high end. Obviously, the royal they all have the royal edicts, if you will. Anyway, a little this happened in Paris, and so we're going to be able to execute it in London, but we Watts of Westminster, just their new collection was Easton Castle because they had used Easton Castle and they were renovating it and doing the fabrics and wallpapers and trims for it, and inspired it into a whole new collection. So we met Lady Easton and we're going to Watts of Westminster. They're going to show us all the pieces in the collection and how they were executed, the process from, in the studio from drawings and documents and everything. And then we're going to go to Easton Castle and she's going to do a tour for Easton Castle showing us the, in situ products, right? That were done and have dinner there and spend the night at the castle.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So,
I'm gonna have to make sure all of you listening are going to get a link to the Deco Tour because you're going to want to try to go.
Yeah.
How many I mean, you don't you don't take huge groups, so it's small,
No.
like,
Yeah, what's the amount?
smaller groups.
Usually Paris, Milan are probably 12 max.
Okay, and they
You
sell
know,
out
where and
very
those are and
quickly.
they
I know.
sell out pretty closely.
Oh,
London, we would probably take 12 because we'll be in a hotel. When we stay in a house like Provence or Portugal, what depending on we're doing Portugal Design Week, so we'll probably be able to take 12. When we stay in a house, we take a max of 8. So when we do Provence and we do our textile deep dives into and makers and artisans, we stay in a house. Everybody has their own it's single occupancy. Everybody has their own bathroom and bedroom. It's typically, swimming pool, outdoor kitchen. We have a private chef. We do our things during the day. We'll go to Lyon and go to sex. We also do a lot of more workshops, hands-on workshops. So we work with this time we worked with a gal that's become a very good friend, I guess you could say. So she's a plume. So she worked for Chanel for 6 years as a plumissiere, and she and her husband moved down to Provence, and he's a chef. And so he does a farm to table luncheon for us, and then we go into her atelier, and she teaches us how to do the feather work.
Oh my gosh,
So
that's
that's one
amazing.
day kind of thing that we do. And then the
I love.
markets and that kind of stuff. We also so not everybody's in the US is familiar with woad, but woad dyeing is the European version of indigo. And it's where the term French blue came from. It's only because only kings could wear this color. It was
Right.
actually the dye itself was actually currency.
Wow.
And we have a master who single-handedly brought it back from it was a dead art. And she and her husband brought it back in France. She's an EPV and she comes to the house and we dye for a whole day.
I saw that. I actually
Yeah.
I was following along.
It's pretty magical.
Vicariously.
It's pretty crazy magical. She's amazing.
Yes.
Amazing. But
Well, we'll
you
make sure that
yeah,
we give
so
her that access to those tours too
sure.
from now on. I'd love
yeah.
to make sure
Yeah,
that our
absolutely.
community knows about it and we can set
I'd
it on
love
the
that.
email
I
list.
mean, I'd love to share that with us for sure. Yeah, so
Yeah.
we have some good ones coming up for 25, as I said, London in May. The Lisbon Design Week is end of May, June. We're in Paris in September. We're in Provence for 2 weeks in September. We're looking at Copenhagen. And we're also looking at we know we'll in November as part of Salon, and we're gonna do a New York tour because there's lots of ateliers and fun things to be involved in New York.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and that's a little
Well,
closer to home.
that's wonderful. Well, we'll make sure you guys all get all of Deb's information and you really need to be following her. You need to be patient.
Yeah.
She is creating amazing experiences and also creating friendships, which I think is even the
Thank
most
you.
remarkable
Thank
thing.
you. It's been
Yeah.
Thank
wonderful.
you so much, Deb.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.